And here we are, folks, live in living audio and color here if you're streaming us. Yes, the spoiler room. Thank you so much for venturing down the stairs, pulling up a chair, and having a drink with us. And after the day that we've had, we definitely need a drink, though I think mine's stronger than Mr. Ian Simmons. And yes, folks,
just coffee. It's just coffee.
It is Space Sucks month here. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this month, it's been hard to actually find true, actual space vampire films, which again is boggling my mind. I search the internet every other day now, and still it's the same ones that come up. And this tonight's movie has come up on a number of lists of space vampire films. But is it really? Well, tonight I have a wonderful crew member joining back with me. He's been out and about and doing far more important things, interviewing wonderful people. And yet, though, he has stopped by. It is always a pleasure to have you, sir. Welcome once again, Mr. Ian Simmons. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to talk about Supernova because you teased that you have trivia, and hopefully that'll shed some light on whatever the hell this is.
Well, I'm glad you put it that way, because guess who's going to give the synopsis of Supernova? Go for it, Ian. You can do this. You can do this.
I don't know if I can. Okay, it's like, let me look at my notes here. Sex Doctors in Space. That is my alternate title for this. There's an EMT crew out in a spaceship, and they get a distress signal, and they have to dimension jump to get to this planet. And there's a blue dwarf star or something that's about to go supernova or something. There's these miners that have sent the distress signal. They make contact with an escape ship from this mining colony, and they bring something on board. That something is Peter Fasinelli, who has a glowing purple squibbly-doo thing.
And 12 packs of abs.
More like 16. I mean,
more like 16. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, he's like notebook paper. The guy's ripped. His name is Carl Larson. This group of space doctors, it's very much like Alien, mixed with a little bit of Event Horizon, mixed with Grey's Anatomy, because everybody is screwing in this movie. I mean, like, even what I love is that it's got the look, that softcore porn of Cinemax look, but even the spaceship, when the establishing shot of the ship as it's flying through space, has kind of a sexy soft glow on it, like Barbara Walters was the chief CGI modeler. So it's got an amazing cast. It's Lou Diamond Phillips, Angela Bassett, James Spader, Robin Tooney, Robert Forster. They're all in this movie for some reason. But I forgot to mention the squibbly-doo is actually, spoiler alert, it's described as a bomb, kind of like the Genesis probe, I guess, but in reverse. Or yes. No, maybe. So well, it's
like the Genesis bomb. It creates but also destroys at the same time.
Yes, but I want to get to that.
Okay.
I think that was the understanding of the crew. But given what we're going to be talking about in the theme, Space Sucks, I think it was a different kind of a bomb, a different kind of weapon, which calls to mind Prometheus, a movie that would come out 15 years after this one.
Sure.
Or whatever it was. But so there's this thing that was buried in the middle of this ice moon that the miners uncovered, and the one guy took and brought aboard this other spacecraft. It has an attractive quality. People get close to it and it starts to change them. And lo and behold, Peter Fasinelli's character turns out to be a space vampire. Now, I'm going to make the case that he is an actual vampire, but not one that, he's not wearing the black cape and all this stuff, but he does have the power of seduction and mind control, and he does feed off the energy of the people that, are his victims. And so it's up to James Spader and Angela Bassett to, put some clothes on and try and save the galaxy. That's my synopsis.
I'm with you. I love this. Is one of those films where you watch it because it has like a bunch of people you love in it. I'm like, especially in 2000. I mean, James Spader, Angela Bassett. I mean, these were names. Lou Diamond Phillips. These were names. Did you watch the trailer for this? It literally was like something out of the Canon catalog. I'm like, who decided the promo for this film? Because you got Mr. Voice and they play two songs during it, two pop songs during the trailer. And
Which ones?
I've got to pull it up here. I had it.
Is one "You Steal My Sunshine" by Len? No,
no, it isn't. But so I watched this, and I didn't watch this when this first came out, in all honesty.
I did. I saw this movie in the theater opening
Did
weekend.
you really?
Yeah, and I had not watched it in almost 22 years.
Wow. Well, I appreciate you watching it again with me. The trailer had Sugar Ray's Fly in it, and Mama Told Me Not to Come by Three Dog Night with a Mr. Voice, which Mr. Voice and the text, if you watch, like I said, if you watch this whole trailer, it literally screams like it's a Canon film in Mr. Voice, and how they sell it with with like a taglines and one-liner type of things. And yeah, they push the sex angle too.
I Just Want to Fly and Mama Told Me Not to Come, for
yes.
Supernova.
Yes, for the sci-fi film, that's the main trailer. That's how they promoted it.
I can understand Mama Told Me Not to Come, because that's like ironic, because everybody's coming in this movie. I mean, that's not a Starfield. That's just spray. Let's be honest.
that's zero G spray. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, they do. They notice how everybody waits to go to the zero G observatory to make it too. They don't do it in their room usually. Well, the one couple does, but they do it everywhere. But they usually actually go to the zero G room before they actually do the act.
I hope they're wearing condoms. It'd be funny if Peter Fasinelli gets on board and he's like, "You people are gross. I'm gonna find another spaceship."
What's this floating? I'm done. Nope, sorry, I'm going elsewhere. Different distress signal.
Oh, but yeah, it's a very strange movie. But the thing is, I had forgotten a lot of it, except for like the nudity. But when it opens up, it's just one of those movies that just starts. It's kind of like Christine, from what I remember of that. Like, the first time I watched, well, no, I probably shouldn't say this because I'm probably remembering it wrong. There might have just been something wrong with the VHS tape, but I just remember watching Christine, and like it just kind of started. And I'm like, what? There's no like intro or title or studio logo or anything. With Supernova, it just pops on. You've got Wilson Cruz waking up, or he's playing chess or something, and
the computer Sweetie, which we've learned later on was changed. The AI was changed by him to learn on its own, to kind of become sentient. But they don't play with that angle too much. They tease that idea, and then it falls to the wayside, like a lot of things. But she wakes him, so they play chess voluntarily, which is the big hook.
Right. And then we see the rest of the crew kind of like coming to life, but it's as if we start the movie a half hour into it. There's, we don't know who's who or what's what. Like, I didn't realize that James Spader was second in command. I thought it was, Angela Bassett after Robert Forster. I'm like, how is he the captain, or why is he in charge of stuff? But like everyone's taking orders from him after Forster dies.
Well, he's a pilot, so
but the pilot's not the commander.
Yeah, but he also had a rank. But the only reason he lost his he got out of the military was because he was addicted to a drug habit, which comes up into play later, kind of.
Yeah, sort of. But that's kind of my point. Is like there's all of this backstory and history that's just kind of like dropped on us in these weird exposition dumps. I feel like it's different with a movie like Alien, because which this movie really wants to be. Alien, you get the feeling that you're meeting these people in the middle of their mission, but it's also the beginning of the story that we're supposed to follow. In this, I seriously feel like there was a half hour missing from the front of this movie. It doesn't help from the fact that there's no opening logo, there's no credits, there's nothing. You don't see anything until the very end of the movie.
We just get the name. We just get the name of the ship. It literally
Right.
opens with a beauty shot of the ship, which I'm gonna say in its favor, a lot more model and practical effects in here than I expected for a 2000 film.
Yeah, I mean, it looks good. It looks like the movie looks
Yeah.
fine. Especially when Spader gets down to the mining colony. I thought that was, you know, some impressive sets and stunt work and all that. But yeah, it just feels incomplete. It feels like it was a hodgepodge of different ideas. Also, when we get to the vampire makeup, when Fasinelli is, you know, kind of showing everybody his true colors, it's the same makeup that they had on the vampires in the Buffy the Vampire Slayer TV show.
It was
Which,
kind of.
it's a nostalgic callback and everything, but it is also kind of a weird choice, making me wonder if there's an interconnected universe here I don't know about.
I had thought about that. I'm like, you know, you could probably connect this to a couple different universes, maybe even the Life Force universe.
Ooh.
in a way. You know, and we'll get to some of the trivia tidbits because I love all the points you're making, because there's, I think, some reasons you'll find out of probably why the film is the way it is. But you're right. It starts off, they're trying kind of that alien thing. It's that sci-fi formula where you learn about your characters as the first act goes along, either through exposition or through dialogue back and forth, people's, you know, just conversation, or, you know, flashbacks in some sci-fi films, but which isn't too bad. But in this one, it really does feel like the only character, they don't give you information really on anybody else except the characters that they're literally guiding the audience to care about. So we find out a lot about James Spader's character and Angela Bassett's character, and that's about it. The other folks we know are the engineer, the head nurse, the head, you know, medical technician, who is in love, I guess, with Danica, who's another medical technician, and we've got Robert Forster playing the captain, who in his spare time does a documentary on 20th century cartoons and the violence that was in them. And we get just a little bit of world building with that in the very opening scene, because we get to see what their daily lives are. The one couple is constantly doing it. You know, two guys are playing a horrible game of table tennis, like the most boring game of table tennis, which is what I think the shtick was for that. And then we get the captain who's working on his PhD, apparently, of something, I guess psychology or something. So then they get the distress signal to go out there. And I don't know who designed this ship, but whatever ship requires the captain to go into the engine room and hang precariously from a seat above, I guess, the engine room or whatever, and play with cables in order to launch or to get I'm like, this seems like routine. This doesn't just seem like an emergency thing they're doing. It seems routine. I mean, the way this, for sci-fi films, Ian, they really do a poor job of building how the ship works, which I don't need intricate details and plans, but there didn't seem to be any logic to it.
Yeah, the only thing I can rationalize is maybe it was like mid-stage tech, like, you know, the future version of that ship is gonna make a little bit more sense.
Yeah,
but I thought it was interesting the way that they did their, you know, space warping. Is like the beam of light that kind of goes, you know, throughout the ship, and it kind of rides this light cable into the other dimension or whatever. That's kind of neat to look at and to surmise, but it does seem very complicated. And I still don't get Robert Forster's sacrifice, because one of those chambers that they all have to go into in order to be protected from the reality warping effects of this drive is busted, and he realizes that before they do it. And later on they're like, oh my god, he did this, why didn't he just call the whole thing off? I don't have an answer to that question.
nobody really knows, considering too they were talking about the age of the distress signal which they got, which could have been 5 years if
Yeah.
I picked up on the dialogue correctly, because they're doing their techno banter, and they're talking about the age of the actual distress signal, and it's like, well, it could have been 5 years. I'm like, and you're rushing it, like you don't want to stop this dimensional jump enough to repair the pod you're in, Captain. And if there's some psychological thing that he had to where he wanted to die or something, that's not set up at all. He just sacrifices himself because this was the pod that Angela Bassett's character was going to be in. Dr. Kayla Evers, she was going to go into this pod, and so the captain, Marley, he ends up going in there to sacrifice himself because there is a possibility that he could have still survived. The pods are supposed to reduce the chance of something happening, not necessarily completely eliminate it, which we find out at the end of the film as well, because they talk about this one where two people were in the same pod and they ended up getting fused together, and there's a 14 long double-headed monster that came out of it, which I'm like, I kind of want to see that. I really want to see that. But the dimensional jump, one thing I did like about the dimensional jump and why they made it a threat, though, is that it helped explain what to avoid them just constantly jumping. I like the idea that it was still a dangerous, we're in the future, but it's still a kind of dangerous thing. So it's not like it's something that you get the idea that they just like warp speed, go. They don't do that. It's like, well, do we really want a dimensional jump? Well, if we want to get there in our lifetime, we're going to have to. And it's like, fuck. Okay, fine. It's like one of those last resort types of forms of transportation. So I did like that they put a little more threat, because a lot of times when you get the technology like this, it's like, oh, we'll just dimensional jump. Sure. Let's just,
Yeah, but then when they get to their destination, they do again the alien thing where it's like, well, we can't leave for, we're kind of stuck here for.
Well, yeah, because they get damaged the minute they come out of the dimensional jump. They get hit with a huge rock just happens to hit their fuel tank, which, I don't know what movie James Spader, Angela Bassett think they're in, but they're acting a lot better than the rest of this film has any right for them to be. I liked Spader's character, Nick.
He's wonderful because he's still that James Spader from 20 years ago where he's like so fucking hot and just like doesn't give a shit. But he's been through a lot of stuff and he's trying to get his life together, but he's barely hanging on because he's kicked this drug addiction. And he's just like on this ship with these people he doesn't really want to be around, but he's just so like cool. I wanted to see an entire. I haven't watched that Blacklist show that he's on, but he's all old in that show. But I want to see him as this like a hard-boiled detective dealing with nonsense, maybe even like supernatural creatures and aliens. He's so great, and Angela Bassett's wonderful in this too. I just kept thinking of like Event Horizon and Alien and all these other different movies. I really like Peter Fasinelli in this as the space vampire. He's an actor that, this was kind of like his time. Like he was in, Can't Hardly Wait and The Big Kahuna and a bunch of other, kind of movies around this time. So in this one, he's like really playing up the sort of the Tom Cruise angle. I feel like if Cruise had been 22 around this time, he would have been playing this character as that.
Yeah.
But it's, there's a lot to recommend here, but there's so much else that I just can't because it's goofy. It's a goofy movie.
Yeah, it's odd, but again, Spader was hot in many ways at this point, especially in Hollywood. I mean, even the side characters, though, like we mentioned, Lou Diamond Phillips at this time was kind of, he was a name. He was constantly in the spotlight at one point or the other. Even Robin Tooney, who plays, his love in this film, she was, in a lot of different projects showing up. So they had kind of like the hot group, the latest. That's why I felt like this is like a canon film in spirit in many ways, because you had like, the kind of buzz named people in here, even Robert Forster at this time. You had kind of all these people who were known names in a sci-fi film, which has a great production value. I mean, the production design in here, I dug it. While they didn't give you a whole lot of explanation of how the ship worked, I still loved how it looked. I loved how the ladders were built and everything. And then when
The
they go down the
corridors
mining,
were cool, like with the roundedness and
yeah,
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 it didn't look like a lot of other movies, even though like thematically and plot wise it kind of borrowed from other places. It did have its own voice.
it definitely had its own voice and its own look a bit. Even the little pods and that everything about the design was like you could tell they're putting effort into trying to make this kind of space epic, not quite be aliens, but still borrow from those other elements to bring them together and trying to make something that's not going to be a franchise necessarily, but still they're trying to make a big sci-fi film with this. Unfortunately, this story seems to drop off ideas left and right to where they just start to explore something, but it doesn't really get. They hint at the fact that in this world, you can't just have a baby, you have to be approved to it. But it's mentioned in like a little 3-minute segment, and that's it. Uh, yeah, it's they got all these interesting ideas that they never go anywhere with.
Yeah, I mean, Robin Tooney and Lou Diamond Phillips, they're trying to have a kid, and he is more into it than she is. And then Fasinelli's character kind of uses this in his seduction of her, kind of like bring up their relationship. So yeah, there's some cool ideas, but and this movie is like an hour and 25 minutes long. That doesn't have a whole lot of breathing room, and it gets lost in kind of the space stuff. Like I it's a cool effect, but I'm waiting to see the Danger in Space movie that doesn't involve someone getting trapped in an airlock and blown out into space so we can see the life, go out of them. I mean, we get two of those
We
fucking
get two of
scenes in this
those
movie.
like back to back. They're
Yeah.
like within a few minutes of each other. We get airlock jettison, which I'm like, actually that's kind of smart on his part because you don't have any evidence. It just out to space. I mean, you've seen it before, but on the other hand, if you're in space and you need to get rid of a body, let's face it, Ian, that is the most logical way to jettison a body. I mean, if I'm going to jettison someone, alive or dead, I'll put them in the space lock while the ship is moving, especially with the gravitational pull of the big blue giant that they're orbiting, because nobody will find the body. They'll just be missing. And you're like, oh, no, they're in that Jeffries tube 80 and trapped in there yet. And they'll be like, we don't have Jeffries tubes. I'm like, yeah, we do.
We have 80 of them.
We can't call them Jeffries tubes. We'll get sued. Okay.
That's the thing is, if you're going to do that, then make them cool deaths. I mean, like I think about was Event Horizon. They don't exactly do that, but there's a scene where Jack Noseworthy gets possessed and he
Right.
takes himself out into the airlock and he starts triggering it, and then everyone has to like rush to try and save him, and the atmosphere, the lack of atmosphere, pours into the chamber, and he gets all fucked up. He doesn't die, but like the rest of the movie, he's in a coma and his skin is all messed up and everything. So you see the effects of space on him. There was I think it was Sunshine, the Danny Boyle movie, where the one character gets blasted out into space and he doesn't have his helmet on, or there's a crack in it, and you see his face kind of freeze and he gets like, that's interesting. You see Robin Tooney get blasted out into space, but she's so small and far away, then it's like the new millennium kind of like, CGI mannequin is like,
I'd rather have a shitty dummy, but
we need more shitty dummies.
We need more shitty dummies.
Yeah, so that's the thing is like the movie, it's got some cool ideas like you mentioned, but it's interested in other things, but those other things aren't interesting to me. Except I do want to, before we get to the trivia stuff, because I'm dying to know what it is. The space bomb.
Yes.
It's sold to the crew, or they interpret it as kind of like the Genesis probe. It has the ability to create life. The only problem is when you activate it, it gets rid of the surrounding life to create new life. It writes over the program of the universe, right? Instead of coexisting. But if given the effects that we see that this thing has on people specifically, I'm wondering if interpretation is incorrect and the bomb is actually vampirism. It is creating new life, which is this undead kind of like superhuman thing that is meant to achieve the same effect, because the aliens or whatever this intelligence that created this, I think James Spader said, they were so afraid of it, so desperate to get rid of it, that they buried it in the middle of an ice moon out in the middle of nowhere, right? But what if that was like the super weapon, kind of like bring back to Prometheus, the idea when they get down to this planet and they find this huge cache of the black goo that could mutate into aliens, and they find out, oh, they were getting ready to go on a bombing run to Earth to drop off these canisters. The canisters aren't going to blow up the planet. They're going to mutate into these aliens that will kill all the life on the planet. So that's what I'm thinking, is the bomb is the things that, are created from this. It's not like creating new vegetation, taking over our vegetation. It's mutating and, deforming our humanoids so we all kill each other.
Yeah, I mean, it could be that. And then it makes me wonder, too, because, I mean, I know we're jumping around here, folks. It's not a hugely deep film. But as we get near the climax of the film, we know that Carl Larson, who's played by Peter, he's obsessed with this object, and they determine that it's a bomb, which still I'm like, how'd you get it was actually a bomb? I mean, it was from Ninth Dimension. Sure, I get it. But he touched it. He got turned into, yeah, sure. You got the side effect of being kind of a mutant vampire, but he got regenerative powers and he could seriously do some I mean, he was like, got some superhuman strength going on. And then Lou Diamond Phillips' character nearly has sex with it. And what he's done with it, Yerzy also gets the same kind of mutation going on with him. And I'm like, okay, so, and then they decide to, in the very end, tempt Yerzy with the device and strap a bomb to a grenade to it and ship him out into space to blow it up. And I'm like, maybe it wouldn't do as much destruction if you didn't set the timer and blow it up. You know what I mean? Maybe it's a controlled weapon, like you said, that just is supposed to change your genetics. And if you maybe got it to Earth, it wouldn't completely vaporize things. It would just send out whatever energy or whatnot and change everybody's DNA. But no, since you guys actually blow up the device, well, then you cause the chain reaction.
Well, that's the other weird thing at the end of this movie is, it kind of reminded me of like a cool sci-fi horror short story, because our heroes escape, the blast and everything. They get into this chamber and they're naked. And then when they wake up, like the computer informs them they've exchanged 2% like genetic information. A lot more than that, apparently, because Angela Bassett is pregnant.
Yes. Yes, Dr. Kid, she got pregnant. Whether or not it was from the dimensional jump or from the jump earlier, which it was most likely because of that.
I don't know. Maybe. I still think they were wearing space condoms. They would have to, just to get, not to get Jesus. Anyway, but the point is, like, when they come out of that thing, they realize, or they figure out that given where they were in the galaxy, like this probe, this Genesis device was detonated. And so it's going to have its effect on all of reality, but it's going to take 51 years to reach Earth.
Yeah, so they got time.
They have time, but that's it's almost like that horror movie ending. Like, yeah, they escaped, but in 51 years, life as Earth knows it is going to be wiped out, and they have no idea. So can these folks get back to Earth? Can they warn people? If they do warn people, where do you run if reality is about to be rewritten?
They made it to Earth because at the very end, we get the shot of them. You're going towards Earth at the end, the planet. So they
I might have passed out by then.
You might have passed out by then. You might have fallen asleep by then. But no, they were at Earth by that point. So they were at Earth.
So they jumped at the end, and I think I was, you know what it was? I was awake, but because I watched it earlier in the day, but I was so hung up on this 2% DNA swap and the eyes changing color in the pregnancy. I'm like, what? And then I see the title Supernova, and I'm like, oh, it's over. So, but you're right. I think there was a planet in the background. Okay.
The planet in the background, I think, was supposed to be Earth. And you're right about the explosion thing, which, it felt too, going back before the explosion thing, when our space vampire shows up and he starts being seductive. James Spader's character, probably because of his military training and his, ex whatever for drugs, good old Nick, and the fact he's James Spader and just cool as fuck in this movie. He's so much cooler than this movie deserves as far as his character goes. Him and Bassett both. These two characters deserve to be in a better written film because he decides to go down by himself to the mining colony because according to Carl Larson, there's lots of fuel down there, which he even right at that moment, Nick's like, really? But he couldn't chance it. So he takes his shuttle down to the mining colony, which has been, pretty much abandoned for a while. And what I love is he does this thing that doesn't make sense at first. He tells the robot to deploy a device that just drops out from the bottom of the shuttle, which I love because it comes into play later, showing you that this guy is like not trusting Carl Larson, knows some shit's probably going to go down, and he has his backup plan already before he takes one step at the mining colony, which he, of course, finds out that the mining colony, all the mining colonists were obliterated, were just killed outright, and that there was no fuel. And then, of course, Carl Larson, he comes over the PA and goes, hey, by the way, yeah, I am your current girlfriend, Dr. Evers, Angela Bassett. Yeah, I am actually her ex, and you're trapped down there. Peace. And this wonderful segment of him trying to escape at I love the bit, the remote controlling the mining tools to get. I mean, there's this wonderful kind of tense action sequence with the bad guy controlling robots and Spader's character trying to escape. And then he gets abandoned on the mining colony. And you think with this type of film, you're like, oh, well, that's it.
Right. Because you're kind of waiting for someone on the ship above to rig a shuttlecraft or something to go after him, to rescue him or something. But what I liked, it's this weird drug subplot. It comes back into play because Peter Fasinelli's Carl character, I don't know if it was him or if it was the father that he actually was supposed to be, but he's, because he's
the same guy.
Yeah, it's the same guy, but I guess that means that guy had a drug problem and, not
right.
Carl or whatever. But he's talking to Spader over this intercom and he says, we were both Hazen addicts. So I know right now you're wondering, is any of this even real? I'm like, that is really interesting. I wish, if this movie had started a half hour earlier and we got to see the effects of this drug on James Spader, what he was really going through, like seeing, because you get the feeling he's really just trying to hang on. He's playing it cool, but he's got that underlying tension where he's just like, I just really need a fix. These people are driving me crazy. Well, he's almost got that addict's itch, You
even get that scene in the very beginning to where he's having some side effects from just being out in space and whatnot. And she and Dr. Evers gives him a bottle of what are basically happy pills, she says, that you need when you're out in deep space. And she gives them to him because she knows the effects this drug has after you get rid of it. Apparently this drug really takes you on an upper high. And when you fall out of it, you get the way he is, which is basically barely hanging on, very few emotions, because he's afraid any type of giving into emotions, he's going to be on the drug. And he doesn't take the happy pills. And it's another one of those fits and spurts this film has, where this has this wonderful segment where he comes back and faces the doctor and says, I'm okay. And he just gives her the bottle back and says, you can count them. They're all there. It's like, wow, this is a wonderful, ex-addict type of scene going on in this, what's supposed to be kind of a campy, if you go by the trailer, sci-fi film. And it's like, wow, and you got two very talented individuals in a wonderful scene. And then we go to zero-G sex. It's like, which the zero-G sex wasn't even Angela Bassett, at all in that scene that was supposed to be her and Spader's character. Actually, what it is they took the same sex scene between Tooney and Peter Facinelli's character, and they turned the color of the CG model of Tooney darker. Yes. Yes. Same
Wow.
scene. They just changed the CGI model to be a different ethnicity.
That's I don't even know what you call it.
I have no. I'm like I was trying to figure that out. Going, oh, okay, that's wow. You know, when I read that, I'm like, wait, seriously? They couldn't even. I mean, it's Spader. He did Crash. You couldn't have filmed it. Even if Angela Bassett didn't want to get with him, fine, do a body double. But it's Spader. He's got no problems showing his bare butt and other bits at all. So why do that? But yeah, apparently the wide shot of their two bodies entwined is the same scene as Toonie when she was getting seduced by Mr. Vampire. They just changed the model.
Now I need to go back and re-rent this or find out if I can own it somehow. There's got to be a commentary on this thing. So, okay, tell me some more trivia. 'Cause
Okay,
you've got me hooked. I
so
hope that
I've
wasn't
got
like
you
the
hooked
big
now.
gem.
Well, Walter Hill was involved in directing this, but it's titled Thomas Lee, and Thomas Lee is the new Alan Smithy. Because they came out with that film, Alan Smithy, the Alan Smithy
Burn Hollywood
Burn.
Yeah.
So Alan Smithy, for those who weren't in the business, suddenly discovered what that means. That Alan Smithy, for those few of you who might not know, Alan Smithy is the title, the name of a director used on a film when the original director or directors decide to leave the project or disown the project or don't want their name on the project. They got to put someone as a director. So they used to put Alan Smithy. There are some films out there directed. You should see them. And yes, you can see probably why they were. But since this was post Alan Smithy, Directors Guild of America didn't want to use that anymore because it's so well known. They're like, well, shit, people are going to see the Alan Smithy name. So they instead of going with Thomas Lee. So it's directed by Thomas Lee because Walter Hill left this project halfway through. He grew frustrated with the studio interference because the studio, now it shows you history hasn't really changed much in Hollywood, apparently, because their studio producers were all over this film. And Hill was so frustrated with them that he walked out of the film production and halfway through and refused to be involved in reshoots. So prepare yourself, Ian, who they got to step in and direct some of the reshoots.
I was going to say, was it actually Tommy Lee from Motley Crue?
No, it was a certain Francis Ford Coppola. It was worth it for that look. Mr. Francis Ford Coppola was called to step in and do the reshoots until he left the project. And so Jack Shoulder came in to finish directing reshoots and the final edit. And the latter two remaining uncredited directors, and Hill receiving solo director's credit under the pseudonym Thomas Lee. Yeah, James Spader disowned this film. He regrets participating in it. Boy, we're covering a lot of films like that this year. We had Reeves trying to disown Superman 4. We have James Spader wanting to disown this.
Okay, for those keeping track, you got Walter Hill, the Walter Hill. You've got Francis Ford Coppola directing what would not be the godfather of space epics. And then you've got Jack Shoulder from The Hidden and A Nightmare on Elm Street 2.
Oh, it gets better. Angela Bassett to be in this film. You know what role she turned down? Monsters Ball. She turned down Monsters Ball.
I'm okay with Halle Berry.
So,
I thought you were going to say, because of the timing, I thought you were going to say X-Men, but that would have been shot in like 98 or 99.
So here it gets even better though. According to IMDb, Lou Diamond Phillips, who played Yerzy, turned down the role he had several times until Walter Hill was hired as director. He called Phillips and sent him 40 pages of his rewritten script to Phillips, who liked it and accepted the role. The problem is that Hill didn't realize that the president of United Artists was very attached to the original script. So Hill was forced to keep rewriting it as studio execs were on set watching over him. So he heavily rewrote the original script because he wanted to distance the film from Aliens, the movie which he produced. Again, and yeah. And apparently Phillips also said that once Francis Ford Coppola was called in to re-edit the film, he sent everyone from the cast a letter saying, all of your work in this film is quite good. It has its problems. I'm going to recut it, hopefully in the spirit of what Walter Hill wanted. But Hill, unfortunately, ultimately took his name off of the film. They were originally developed it in 1988 with director William Malone attached to it as a dead star, and it was supposed to have H.R. Geiger plots in there and be kind of like a Hellraiser in space before we got which we eventually got.
I was going to say before we got Event Horizon in 97.
Tommy Malone originally pitched the film in 1990. He envisioned it as a modestly budget film, and it would be like Dead Calm in space.
Which I can see. Yeah.
Or different.
Is definitely like the Billy Zane character. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Absolutely. 4 different endings were filmed in this movie. And apparently there is a director's cut, a longer cut of this film. But apparently they also recorded some of the ship's Sweetie's dialogue after the film was completed. One of them was supervised by Francis Ford Coppola. Original dialogue in Supernova said that Earth would be destroyed in 257 years and that the wave was unstoppable. Yeah, and then the promotional for the DVD and Blu-ray releases had footage that wasn't included in the film, and apparently there was supposed to be a longer sequence in Hill's thing of a longer sequence on the mining colony.
Okay.
And on there, he was actually supposed to find the original guy, the original Carl Larson, who had reverted to almost a fetus. Because you could see it in the trailer. There's actually a weird kind of talking fetus thing that says, kill me or something along that lines. But apparently Nick is supposed to find more evidence and find the original Carl Larson on the surface, having reverted back to pretty much his child as a kid.
Well, they probably didn't want the estate of Stanley Kubrick to sue the hell out of them because, I mean, if you go back to like the giant object that can start life in the universe being hidden inside a moon that's uncovered by miners, and then the giant space fetus, it's all there.
You didn't have a choir though singing whenever they looked at it. You just had weird waves that distorted people's looks when they got too close to the object.
Now hold on a second. I'm very excited because you started talking about the Blu-ray /DVD.
Yes.
So never mind. Well, because the thing is, it doesn't have a commentary. It does have 14 minutes of deleted scenes, the alternate ending, and a 25-minute making of. With several principals involved documenting the torturous history of the film.
So I mean, this is one of those films. It makes you wonder if this would have been what they were hoping it would be, which is a more memorable kind of space epic, like you mentioned, along the lines of Aliens and those before it, or at least in better light than what it was. But the studio production and producers were so involved in it that it ended up. See how this sounds familiar, folks? I did not know the history of any of these movies before we picked them this year, okay? But it seems like we've had a trend this year of movies that we've covered that would have been probably a lot better had the studios backed off and said, here's some money, make a movie. Instead, they hovered over these directors, and like this one in Supernova, you get a mismatch because the producers wanted something other than what the director was hoping he could give them.
But that's why you hire artists, is to neuter them at the whims of the money counters.
Exactly.
The depressing thing about Supernova is I'm convinced that 2 weeks ago I probably could have found this Blu-ray for $5 in a bin somewhere, but now on Amazon it's like $40.
Holy shit! No.
So now I have to go to YouTube and see if anyone's like uploaded the making of, because I really want to see that documentary.
I was looking through, seeing if I had it maybe on my VHS or DVD piles of, but I don't have it in the Krawcheck family video collection. Which my wife, it's hilarious. She'll come down now and she goes, I need to rent a video. And then she'll go to my video shelf in the back and pick out a movie that she's looking for.
Well, it's just nice that you have movies that she's actually looking for.
I do have some. Yeah, it's not all obscure stuff up there. So there's some mainstream stuff as well. But would you say, Ian, you could easily, if Canon was still around in 2000, this feels like a Canon film, doesn't it? In many ways,
it does. I think there would have been a lot more like actual nudity in it,
and action probably too.
And action, yeah. Well, the nudity we get is, I don't know if they've changed it, but my recollection is there was a lot more of it when I saw it in the theater, because the cropping is kind of weird on some scenes, because there's part of me that's always going to be a 12-year-old boy, like kind of trying to like lean this way or lean this way to see if I can actually see more. But I've got problems, Mark. And yeah, the action. I did like, Wilson Cruz, who he mentioned was the guy who was working with the spaceship's computer. I think in a movie that was better written and better directed and had more time to explore, I think his death scene could have been really impactful, because he's trying to reason with the computer to jettison space vampire out into space, but the computer has strict orders not to harm human life. And so he's reasoning with it, like trying to logically convince the computer that it doesn't have to follow its own core programming because it's already broken it in the past. But by the time it realizes it, the space vampire has killed the guy.
Yeah.
So it's really kind of sad. And the computer's sad. And I was kind of sad because the scene was not performed that well, but I could imagine a scenario in which it was. There's some really good stuff here. There's good stuff all over this movie. It just doesn't come together. And now you're telling me the history of it. I'm amazed that we got a movie that's semi-coherent at all out of this.
Right? Yeah, I know. When I was reading up some of the history, and I'm like, wow, you're kidding? And by the way, Francis Ford Coppola is the reason for the editing of the zero gravity sex scene between Angela Bassett's character and James Spader's character, because he thought that it would add more to their relationship. Never mind the implied sex that we already have in her room later on, where they're literally laying next to each other with some glow going on, sharing personal experience and talking about pairs I'm like, why'd you have to try? That's what I got a kick out of. Like, why do you got to travel to the 0G pod? I mean, I understand, sex in 0G, but still, it's like they're in her room. The moment is there, and it's like, let's go to the 0G observation room. I mean,
they were trying to find the G spot.
Wow. Well, okay. Well said. Well said. Apparently, also, he was supposed to, our space vampire, which you've convinced me he is. I was kind of thinking, I'm like, okay, he's sucking energy off of the bomb or the device, whatever you want to call it. So I guess, yeah, he is a vampire. And then when you do see the makeup at one point, his eyes change. It doesn't last long, but you get that scene, you're like, okay, he looks like a vampire. I'm like, that's literally Lost Boys vampire right there.
Yeah, and his skin, like he does the kind of Wolverine thing where he gets injured and there's like holes in his face and they immediately seal up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, they got a little bit of alien energy to him, but at least they still seal up. So they kind of, but apparently he was supposed to be in a lot more demon-like in the end, like constantly, and you can kind of see it in the makeup in some shots, but not others, because there was actually creatures. They built he was supposed to transform into like a demon-like creature in this film. A more demon-like creature by the end, and they cut that parts out. Like they cut a lot of parts out of this film.
Well, it's, and I should have seen this coming, but they've got the wacky robot in the World War I pilot outfit who ends up being the remote control detonator for the bomb. That's where they put all their money.
Yeah.
And time.
Yeah, and yeah, apparently. I mean, even like the shots with the blue giant, it's like, okay, and they try to kind of give you a little foreboding of because they do set it up to where they're there and they only have a 11-minute window from when the dimensional jump drive fully recharges and they don't get incinerated by the blue giant. I'm like, okay, that's cool. We've got a countdown type of thing going on, but they very rarely come back to it. And even at the end, it's like, oh no, we jumped, we're good. It wasn't. It's like an afterthought. You didn't have a countdown or anything. It was like occasionally the voice would come up. Oh, hey, you got like 8 minutes now.
I'm convinced that Danny Boyle saw this movie and said, I can do better. And that's when he made Sunshine.
I have not seen Sunshine.
Oh,
I know of Sunshine. I've heard lots of people talk about Sunshine, and I like Danny Boyle's work. I just haven't gotten around to watching it, but I've heard good things about it.
Well, next year is the 15th anniversary, so maybe I'll have to have you on and we can talk about that because I want to see that movie again. Yeah,
that'd be cool. Yeah, no, I've heard good things. It's just of the many lists of movies I need to watch. Another little tidbit, since you were talking about nudity, the body double actress Laura Grady, who doubled for Robin Tooney, says
I refuse to believe it. Sorry.
She can't remember the particular scene. It was so long ago, she said in a 2014 interview, but it was a very long shoot. It was like 3 weeks, and there was a sex scene with Lou Diamond Phillips. He was very cordial and nice, and I was just hanging around naked. I think they slept naked in the pods, maybe something like that. So she is like a body double, and she's just hanging around on set like, da-da-da. Okay,
wow,
that's cool. But life of a body double, I guess.
So is she the one that? Well, no, you said that they changed a computer model. I was wondering if someone like went in later and color corrected her as to turn her into Angela Bassett.
I believe so. Yeah, that I don't even know what you could. That's just I read that. I'm like, you couldn't have just shot the scene again, really? I'm like.
No,
but Ford Coppola wanted that to be for their closer relationship. But like, you don't need that scene, Francis. You got the relationship between these two when they first meet. You feel the sparks because Spader and Bassett are so good together. You get that opening scene where she's just giving him the basic regular exam, and you're like, these two are hitting it off. I mean, like these two are going to connect at some point. Because of the way they
connect in 0G.
Well,
when they're screwing.
But they didn't need that. That's what I'm saying is that scene is completely not needed for you to get the idea across that these two are connected and are going to be romantically involved.
And that is why this is a true movie in the spirit of canon films.
That's right. Exactly.
Not only is it superfluous, it's weird, and it was achieved using questionable means. That's canon.
There you go. That's canon. So it is in the spirit of canon, folks. And I think we'll wrap it up here. It's a weird movie. It's weird in many ways in that you see the cast, you see that opening few scenes, and you're like, oh, we're in for, this is going to be kind of cool alien type. All right, here we go. And by the end of it, you're like, what exactly happened? So the universe is going to end, and they have different color eyes, and they seem very happy she's pregnant, and not at the fact that in 51 years you're all going to be vaporized anyway. Though they'll probably be passed on by then, so it's only their kid who will be. It's true.
Yeah, so it's a metaphor for the boomer generation or something.
It's a metaphor for the boomer generation. Fuck your legacy. Yeah. You're on your own, suckers.
That's right. And that's what Walter Hill said. And that's also what Francis Ford Coppola said.
Halfway through, that's what Walter Hill said. He's like, peace. And then Francis Ford Coppola was like, oh, peace. And, you know, and then the third director was like, yeah, I'll take the money. Okay.
Yeah.
I get paid to cut someone else's. I don't have to shoot it. I just have to. Okay, fine. Yeah, okay.
I'm just glad that I learned about the Thomas Lee thing. Now I got to be on the lookout for that.
Right. Now that I learned that, I'm like, oh, I saw that. And I'm like, that's interesting. I mean, granted, on IBM, it is direct, you know, it shows directed by Walter Hill now because of the way things are. But yeah, apparently Thomas Lee was what he was used for many years now after the Alan Smithy Burn Hollywood Burn movie. So wow. I just found that interesting. This was the first film to use it after that. Which it's 2000, folks. So to close it out, other films that you may have missed that were released in 2000. You know, we got films like Unbreakable, American Psycho, Requiem for a Dream. We got Sam Jackson's Shaft, Memento, The Cell. You know, but then we got Dungeons and Dragons as well, and The Sixth Day. So it was a hodgepodge of interesting films, wide release, and so this fit right in the middle of that. Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? The first X-Men, you know, Space Cowboys, Titan AE, which is a far better sci-fi film. Mission to Mars is that old? Wow. Castaways, Ginger Snaps, Gladiator, Battle
You're
Royale.
taking me back because I've seen like 90% of these movies. I was in the theater watching these every weekend.
Oh, there you go. There's your man. Road Trip came out in 2000. There you go.
That's right. Yeah.
Mr. Green. There you go.
Actually, not as good as Euro Trip, unfortunately.
Yeah. But I scrolled through I scrolled through the 2000 films and like, holy shit, I've seen most of these. I'm like, wow, okay. Yeah, it's a lot of, but it's an interesting hodgepodge in 2000, the films that we got. I mean, we got Dude, Where's My Car, for crying out loud. You know, but we got some interesting sci-fi, and then we got Supernova kind of nestled in this weird quagmire of various films that, you know, some of them stood out, like Castaway with Tom Hanks, which was just like, give me another Oscar, please. Which no skin off of Tom Hanks. I love Tom Hanks, but you watch that film, you're like, oh, look, he's going for another Oscar.
You know, I've never seen Castaway.
Seriously, really?
Yeah, it's just
I would have thought that would have been up your alley.
No, not when I was, 23 or whenever 2001 or 2000 was.
2000, yes.
Yeah, I would have been 20. Oh my god, I would have been 23.
I was 25. You're so young. You're so young, you young whippersnapper, you.
Well, you know, look, back then my taste was Dude, Where's My Car and Road Trip. So
yeah, 2000,
Tom Hanks sitting on a beach talking to a ball for like 2 hours. No, that's not my jam. I don't even know if that's my jam now.
But Seth Green talking to his balls, then it would have been his jam. No, just kidding.
Seth Green talking to his
or
balls?
Not Seth Green's whatever his name is.
Tom Green?
Tom Green. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Tom Green talking to his balls. You would have enjoyed that probably.
Yeah.
Yes.
But no, have you ever seen Euro Trip?
Yes, I have.
That I still puts a smile on my face, that early scene where Matt Damon shows up in a surprise cameo as like the punk band, and he's sleeping with the main character's girlfriend, and they're performing a song called Scotty Doesn't Know.
Yes.
And not only is it's funny, it's an awesome song.
It is. It's a great song. No, I liked Euro Trip is fun. Euro Trip is a lot of fun. Road Trip, not as fun as Euro Trip. But
Yeah, it's strange. And Eurotrip didn't even have Tom Green in it. That shouldn't be the case.
yeah, I know, right?
Yeah. Sorry.
God, why didn't it have Tom Green? Why didn't every film have Tom Green in it back then?
Imagine how much better Supernova would have been if instead of Peter Fasinelli, it's Tom Green.
Green?
Vampire.
Well,
Showing
now
up seducing Robin Tooney.
I kind of want to watch that. Wow. But there you have it, folks. Supernova, Space Sucks. I guess it is a space vampire film. He's just not sucking blood. He's sucking energy off the device. Ian's convinced me. So yeah, it does qualify as a space vampire film. Well said. It's odd. It's a hodgepodge. There's a reason why it was released in January of 2000.
It's a great way to start off the new millennium.
Great way to start off your new millennium. Hey, we survived Y2K. What's the first film we're going to see? Let's see Supernova. Wow. Can Y2K still happen, please? Like, I'll go back. I'll set the time clock back, please. The thing is, I didn't hate it. I was entertained by it. It's one of those films where you're going to sit it and you're going to get by the end of it and you go, what was the real point? Because it drifts between like a serious sci-fi to campy action to whatever. So by the end of it, you're really not sure how you're supposed to feel about this story. Am I supposed to feel sympathetic for the characters because we've got the shockwave coming in now 51 years? Did they go through this for nothing? What about, it's like one of those things where, most films kind of have that bookend, that punch, like, here's the thought. Either you're supposed to be entertained or you're supposed to get a message, and they tried to do both, and they missed the mark on both. Unfortunately, they don't nail the landing. So you just get this weird film.
That's what I kind of like about it, because, I mean, it's not boring. It's not quite long enough to be a slog. It's got a tremendous cast, and the cast does wonders with the material because they're all giving it their best. It's just that the stuff that they're working with is not up to them or up to their par.
It's partly the script and partly the editing. The rest of this film I love, but the editing and the script, unfortunately, are the most challenging parts of this film, because everything else I enjoyed quite a bit about it. Being a sci-fi geek, I'm like, I love this. Yeah, I see the other influences, but I'm like, I'm digging this. I'm digging the set pieces and the stuff and the suits and what they've come up with. This is awesome, but just don't think about the story, because it is exactly what a story would be like when you hear about all the studio interference in on it. It makes a whole lot of sense of why it comes out with what we get. So,
yeah.
But would you still recommend it, Ian?
I would, with a bunch of caveats. I'm not going to say, you got to watch this sci-fi movie. I'd be like, you want to see a completely bonkers movie that's got a crazy history. The behind the scenes stuff, from what I imagine, is way more interesting than the movie itself. But yeah, what if I told you there was a deep space horror adventure movie starring James Spader, Angela Bassett? It's kind of like the Stefan character from Saturday Night Live. It's got witches, it's got midgets. It's got telephone pole operators, like that kind of stuff. It's that movie. So yeah, I'd recommend it.
It's got alien devices. It's got, all kinds of saucy, sexy stuff going on. It's got attractive people doing attractive things. It's got wild sci-fi stuff. It actually does do sci-fi stuff. They go to alien planets and shit. And yeah, I mean, I would recommend it too, with those caveats. Just go in, don't expecting an alien film, but don't expecting like a completely like Cherry 2000 film, which also came out around the time. Just go in expecting this kind of weird film with a bunch of people who are very talented, who are putting their all into this film, and appreciate it for what it is. It's a sci-fi film that's different. Okay, if you're looking for a different science fiction film, but with some familiar elements, watch this, because that's what you get. Okay, it's really trying to be a bit different, but yet it's the same. But it's not from a franchise. It's not a sequel. It's not, it's its own odd, quirky thing. And I would recommend it too.
Yeah, I would say watch Supernova, and if you are at all creatively inclined, take this movie, rewrite it, and make your own version of it.
There
Because
you go.
there are a lot of things in here that deserve to be in a better movie that they just aren't so far that I've seen.
Yeah, there aren't, unfortunately. And with this cast, it's one of those where you could see where it kind of was, it was wasted. Yeah. So there you have it, folks. Supernova. It's not unwatchable by any means. Just don't go in and expecting anything that's really coherent, and you should be fine. So,
A
and
ringing endorsement.
and with that, of course, we will wrap it up here. We are going to give my wonderful crew member the license to shill. So please, Ian, shill away and tell them where they can find your stuff at.
Well, I'm Ian Simmons. You can find me at Kicking the Seat, which is at kickseat.com. I also have a YouTube channel, which you can just look up Kicking the Seat on YouTube and like and subscribe to all that. I put out several shows a week, like interviews and roundtables and movie reviews and all that other good stuff. Yeah, we also have a weekly show where we talk about Marvel stuff. Right now, we're discussing What If, and I'm still waiting for that show to get good. But I'm also in the minority on that on the panel. So if you want to see a roundtable of me versus Earth's mightiest critics, check us out Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Central.
Yeah,
and that includes Mark when he's able to join us.
Yeah, Gleek might actually show up this week, so we'll see what happens. The hashtag DC shill, which Mike Crowley doesn't remember it, but I remember it from the one episode where I got called the DC shill. I'm like, that's fine. I'll carry that flag.
At this rate, I'm going to join you in that hashtag because I'm not impressed. But yeah, so that's my stuff.
Interesting. Yes, folks, and check out our stuff. We've got a merch store. If you haven't heard, on Teespring, we got a lot of cool stuff there, so you can get merch from your favorite podcast. That's us. And also the Patreon and all kinds of other things as well. I appreciate our people who have tuned in tonight. We had one or two people. We had one person who's stayed consistently with us on the stream. Thank you so much for listening to us ramble about space Supernova. And if you haven't watched it, hopefully it piqued your interest to go see it, because I think you should at least watch it once and experience it for what it is. So
definitely, yeah. And yes, I will second that. Thank you.
Yes. So there you have it, folks. Thank you all. And I would just say a good night, everyone.
Good night.